Hello, guys. I hope you are doing good and keeping safe at your home. And with that wish, I'll be starting this session today on the basic Python programming. Let's get started. We'll be taking off from the last few commands from the last few concepts that we left over primarily around print and the output functions. Let's get started. I'll be sharing my screen with you guys so that you can have a view. So, guys, I hope you can see my screen fine and let's get started. So as you can probably see on the screen, I have something called x is equal to 10, print x, right? So just think about a situation we discussed the last time about print and the output function. Print is a blueprint we talked about. It's a view. It's something which gives us an idea how the thing looks like, right? Let's start with a layman thought process. Let's start with a very casual discussion here. Just think about a situation that you thought of preparing a dish, these days, and you were just going through a cooking recipe book, right? And you were like amazed by one of the dish out there, by one of the delicacy, and you wanted to prepare it. But one of the things while watching it, you felt that there is something missing. What was that? You thought about just garnishing it with coriander and something, right? But the fact is, since that is a picture, that's a view of how the dish looks like, you cannot do that. You are incapable of garnishing it. What if you prepare that dish at your home, and then when you are done with it, you have the output in your hand, you garnish it? That's possible, right? So what is the difference in print and output? So what is the difference in between the view of the dish and what you prepared? So this is where the thin line comes into picture. The thing that you were viewing in that book was a blueprint of that dish, was a view of that dish, how it looks. But when you prepared it in your home originally, it was there in your hand, it was the output in your hand, and you can do anything with it. So you can manipulate the output in hand, but you cannot manipulate a view, something which you are viewing, something which is a blueprint. So like that, if you see on the screen, I have something called x is equal to 10, and I print it. So I get that x has a value 10, and this is how it looks. If I try to manipulate it, I cannot do that because print gave me the view of x. It told me how x looks like the dish in the cookery book, right? So it tells me how it looks like. You cannot add that garnishing on it like that. You cannot manipulate this print of x. You cannot change it. You cannot change it. It's just a view. Mark my words, right? But if you have the output in hand, like you prepared the dish and you have that in hand, you can change it, you can manipulate it. So if you see x is equal to 10 here, you can see this in red. There's something called out written before the value 10. That shows that this is an output. This is something which is there with you. You can manipulate it. You can just add 10 to it, multiply 10 to it, whatever you want to do with this x, you can do it, because this is an output in hand. This is not something which you're viewing. So this is a big difference between output and print, guys, and many people are perplexed at present also with this very simple phenomenon. So I want your basics to be very, very great. They should be on the top, because when we are making a building, we should make sure our base is strong, right? So let's move forward. I think you might be perplexed with this idea that if the output is something which we can manipulate also and we can view also, then what is the need of this function called print? There might be a thought, right? You might be thinking about it, right? I am sure about it. You might be thinking. So for that, I have a very nice answer to it. Just look on the screen. You can probably see I have something called x is a is equal to 1, b is equal to 2. And I want that this command gives me the output of a also and the b also. So if I run it, I can just see that it is giving me the value of b, not the value of a. This is not what I wanted. I wanted the value of a also and b also. So what can help me in getting that? So there is a drawback which I want to tell you. So in a cell, you will get the output of the last input that you put. So if you have 7, 8 outputs in the cell. You want the value of A also, B plus 10 also, C also, C plus 7 also, a lot of outputs. You will just get the output of the last input that you have put. You will not get everything. This is a big drawback. So just to overcome that, what do we have? We have a very beautiful command called print. It was not something which was useless. It is a very important command, guys. So if I say print A, print B, I will get both the outputs, right? I can surely not manipulate it, but if I want to manipulate it, let's first manipulate it here and then print it. It's pretty simple, right? So print is a very handy command. It's a very interesting command when you want to get several outputs in a cell. So it's very important, right? It's not useless. It's very thoughtful process which comes to mind when you get the difference between the print and output. I am sure about it, but this is a very simple answer to it, right? So guys, now we'll be understanding some very minute details. To understand that, you should understand, you might have gone through a few programming languages, and if not, no matter. So if you probably see on the screen, I have taken two text written over here on the screen. I have actually written a name called Tanisha, and I have also written it in lowercase and in proper case with the first letter capital. So what do I want to show with it? So I want to tell you something about Python, some very minute detail about Python, that it is a case sensitive language. So what do you mean by case? So case means the way you write your text. It can be uppercase, it can be lowercase, it can be proper case. So what do you mean by lowercase? When you have all your letters in this text small, right? If they are all capitals, it's called a uppercase. If you have the first letter capital and the other small, it's called a proper case. So what actually happens here is Python takes all these things as different objects. So this name called Tanisha with lowercase is something different for it, and this name with capital letter T, starting with the capital letter T is a different object for it, and it will treat both of them differently. Both of these things are different for it. So if you want both of them to be understood in a similar manner, you have to put them in same case. Mark my words, same case. And you might not be believing me, right? You might be saying, how should we actually believe you that it is taking this Tanisha with lowercase and Tanisha with proper case in different way? Don't believe me, look at it. So guys, you can see I have written something called print ID of C1, print ID of C2. So what is this ID? I'll be explaining. But if you actually look at these two numbers, they are different. They are actually showing that C1 has some identity, some number associated with it, which is 4541745560, and the other one is 4541744888. So these two are different numbers. Two numbers associated with two things which are, the same name with different cases are different. So these numbers are different, showing that it is taken differently by Python, right? I would tell you now what ID is. Guys, you might be knowing if you are working in a workplace, in a company, or if you are a student at school, you have a student ID associated with yourself or a employee ID associated with you, right? So that ID is a unique number which is given to you, right? Like that, anything which is created in Python is given an identity. So there is a space in which that thing is kept, and there is an identity, there is a number which is associated with it. And we can see that very number with this thing called ID. It's a very, very nice concept, guys. And you should know this. Many people do not know. So just, I wanted to spend some time to give you an idea that we can understand that there is a unique number associated with everything that you make in Python, right? Let's move forward. So guys, now a very interesting thing, if anybody has done any other programming language, they might have seen like C, C++, Java, C Sharp. So they might have seen that while they are describing, a variable, you have to say that string X, you have to say int X is equal to this, string X is equal to this. long x is equal to this. So you have to tell them that what is the type of the data I want to feed in this variable, right? But in Python, you do not have to do that. You can directly write x is equal to 10. You didn't write int of x is equal to 10, right? So this is a very interesting thing. You can also write x is equal to Tanisha. So what you are seeing is the x, which was previously carrying integer, is now capable of even carrying Tanisha, string, right? But if you see in C, C++, other languages, it is not possible. Some space which is reserved for integer cannot be taken up by a string or a character form. Information of data which is in text. You cannot replace it with that. This is a constraint there. So how is it able to do that? It's a very interesting question that you might be thinking of, and I'll be telling you the answer for it. Before that, let's look at. So I said x is equal to 10, and I have seen its identity. And I said x is equal to Tanisha, and I saw its identity as well, which seems to be pretty different, guys. So you can probably see x is equal to Tanisha. I saw its identity is a number which is pretty different from the previous number. So what is happening in the memory of Python, a space with this number is reserved in which, it put this very, this very numeric form called 10 and stored it, right? And then when it wanted to store Tanisha, it stored a space in the memory with this very ID you can see on the screen, and just stored Tanisha, the text Tanisha there, and started pointing towards that very identity number which you can see on the screen. So I know that you might be running the same command and you might be getting some different numbers. It is dependent upon the space allocated in the memory of everyone's laptops and computers. So do not worry about different numbers. But you would surely see that x is equal to 10. So it was first pointing to another ID where 10 was stored, and then it is not replacing that 10 with Tanisha. You can probably see that because the IDs are different. So it was previously pointing to a number called 10, which was stored at this identity number. Then it stopped pointing to that and started pointing to this very text called Tanisha, which is stored at a place whose identity is the one you can see on the screen. So it's a very nice idea, and it's not known to all. So it's a very nice thing you should know in when you are making your fundamentals right. Okay. So guys, now we'll be talking about a very interesting thing you would be interested to know. So when you're naming a variable or naming a function or any entity in Python, now what is a function and what do you mean by entity in Python? You might be thinking of that. We will be discussing very broadly on that, so do not worry about it. Let's talk about naming convention in general. So let's talk about naming a variable. You might be knowing what variable is. We have discussed in the last video, variable is made of two words, very simple two words, variable. A space in the memory where you can store, basically a storage which has the ability to vary. You can put, you have seen x, right? Where we placed 10 before, then we placed Tanisha. So it is a storage which has the ability to vary, right? So what we can probably see, there are some constraints while naming that very variable, right? So when you see this, so these are a few things I have put on the screen for you. So the fact is, the naming convention has some rules that it has to follow. What are those rules? The rules are that it can have an underscore. The name can have an underscore. It can even start with an underscore. The name has to have capital letters A to Z, or small letters A to Z. It is not mandate that it should have it, but it can have the letters A to Z, the small letters or the capital letters, right? It can have digits from 0 to 9, right? You have to understand, it can have digits from 0 to 9, but it cannot start with the digits. So if you are talking about a variable, you have to name it. It can have any alphabet from A to Z. It can be capital or small. It can start also with a alphabet which is small or capital. It can start with an underscore or can have underscore anywhere in the length of the name of the variable. It can have a digit also in the name of the variable, but the name of the variable cannot start with a digit. So just to make you understand this pretty well, let's see. So if you say A B C capital A1, so this is a possible name of a variable. You can see the alphabets are here, A B C small, then a capital A is there, then a digit 1, which is a digit between 0 to 9 is there. So these sort of things are possible. You can also write underscore 1. Underscore can also be there as a part of the name of the variable we are talking about. If we see we want to start with a underscore, it is possible. Suppose that we start with a digit. This is not a possible name of a variable. This is not a possible situation. If you are going to try this, it will surely give you an error. Let's try this. Let's see what happens. And you can probably see it is saying a invalid syntax. Right, guys? So let's try to understand a bit more. Also, these names cannot have special characters. Let's see what you mean by special characters. So let's see this. So if you try to do this, this is also not possible. It is saying a syntax error. So you cannot put special characters in the name of a variable. Okay, and also there are certain reserved keywords in the name of the variables. Like, as you probably see, I will be, teaching you the keywords. So do not worry about it a lot. I'll tell you the keywords. In short, I'll be saying that you cannot have the name of the variable as keywords. What are keywords? We'll be understanding broadly in the session coming forward. So do not worry about that. Let's see some examples, and I hope you are able to point out what are variable names and what are not. So if you see the first one, do you think it is a variable name? So guys, if you want to try it, just pause the video for a second, try it and come back. But I will be surely giving the answers here. So if you see std underscore id, so I can probably see these two are small letters of the alphabet, and these two are also. This is an underscore. So all this is possible, but you have put a dot here, which is a special character, which is not allowed in the name of a variable. So this is not the possible name of the variable. If you see this, it starts with a number, a digit 1, which is not a possible condition for a name of a variable. So this is not possible. If you see this, I have a hyphen in between, which is a special character. Again, this is not possible. This starts with a small letter, possible. It has these small letter alphabets, which is possible. Underscore, good, and 1 is a digit. So this is a possible name of a variable. And if you see this, this is also pretty cool. It starts with a capital alphabet, and then N is a small letter, S small letter, and 1 digit. So this is all possible. This is pretty good. So the last two are right, and the first three are not possible names of a variable. I hope you were able to point it out well. And if not, so, revisit the video. I hope you will, regain the ideas pretty well. So guys, I hope you remember our last discussion on what a variable is. It's pretty simple, a storage which has the ability to vary. This storage can be occupied by an integer, like you can see 10 here, 1.2. I can also put Tanisha, something which is alphanumeric like code 1. So I can put anything in this very variable. I can even put lists, tuples, and you might be thinking it as jargons, right? But we will be studying in very depth what a list is, what a tuple is. For keeping it short here, I would say just think that this variable can take values like 10 something, which are integers here, can take values like 1.2, 1.5, 25.45, something which has values after the decimal also. So that's called float, values. Those values also it can occupy. Also, the values which are in text form, as you can probably see on the screen, like Tanisha, and also something which is alphanumeric, as you can probably see here, it is written code 1 and I have stored it in x2. So these sort of values it can pretty well occupy. This is a very simple thing, and I hope you have understood it well. Okay, So guys, now we'll be understanding how we can comment something. So you might be thinking that I want to write A is equal to 1, B is equal to 2, and now I want to have sum of it. So you can see it on the screen, right? I just get 3. And I want to tell somebody that A plus B means sum of two numbers and do something. So whenever you are writing a big line of code and you are giving it to somebody in production, or when you are working with some people in team, you always want to share code, and you cannot always understand what other person has written. So to make sure that you have other person understand what you have written, you should always comment it. You should always write some notes to what you have done. How can you do that? It's pretty simple, guys. You have to do shift and this hyphen, so as to comment something. It's pretty simple, guys. Just in hyphen with shift and you are done. So this comment can be written. Now the most challenging part is when you have multiple lines written as comments. What can you do? Are you always going to go in the front? So I will give you an example here. So just think about this. So you have written one line, you have put shift hyphen, and it is commented. But as soon as you come to the next line, it is not taken in continuation with the previous line. You have to comment it again. And this is a painful task, going to shift and then hyphen. Again, a painful task, right? And I understand that, pretty well understand it. It is. So how should we curb this? How should we go ahead and remove this? It's pretty simple, guys. So if you have to comment multiple lines of code, you have to just say shift and question mark. You have to highlight all of them, guys. First of all, you have to select all of them and have to say control or command question mark, and everything that you want to comment will be commented. So it's pretty simple, guys. I hope you have understood each and everything here, and in the next session coming forward, I will be moving you through a lot of other basic concepts. With this, I will be ending off this session.